there. Just gonna go live on the YouTube. All right. You're all set.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a meeting of the Southborough Master Plan Committee, April 7th, 2021. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, in the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Master Plan Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend to this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at Southborough's website, www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, and so the first item on the agenda is update on any goals or recommendations. Are there any new goals or recommendations? No? Was there something new from open? I got an email from Judith about open space, Karen.
Yeah, so there were a few small tweaks. So I'm just trying to pull that up now. Based on feedback, the most recent feedback of the committee. And they primarily were just trying to, focus it a little bit more. Let me just pull that up here. All right, so I can just share my screen just a little bit, and again, I think it's probably, I guess I just need permission to share there.
Sorry about that. You should be all set.
Super. Okay, great. So we just had a little bit of a discussion in our last meeting, kind of reviewing. I basically said, okay, we're ready to write the chapter. We're writing the chapter. Now is the time if you have any last feedback. So there were a few small things that people talked about, which I sent to Judith, and I think probably has been forwarded to you, Mimi. So one was just really when we're trying to build in accountability, and we recognize that the Open Space Preservation Commission would be accountable for quite a lot of the goals that are listed here, that just really trying to think about support and resources that are needed for that to happen. And so I think that'll probably be important as we start to look at accountability. So there was that piece that was discussed. Then we actually just kind of went through sort of with a fine-tooth comb to each of the goals and tried to think about anything that had happened recently. So, we talked about, I'm a dog lover and owner and walker, but we talked about the need for kind of really being more clear about what trails and resources are okay for dogs and pets and what aren't. But then the possibility of a dog park, which actually was listed in one of the other goal areas, but really trying to emphasize that. And really thinking through, some of the the primary stakeholders that would be important for some of the open space resources, and really starting to think, when we think about open space, what's the primary use of the open space? And if we could define that, that's going to help us to better indicate what the usage goals would be on it. So is the primary use recreation, or is the primary use trails? So we had a little bit of a discussion about that. Freddie did bring in something that I know that is kind of newly on some people's minds, which is the recognition of the possibility of droughts, especially given that right now we're in a bit of a low rain season compared to what was expected. So Judith responded to that and asked for more details around that. I'm in the process now of trying to recognize more details, but just whether or not we should really start to think about drought as well as some of the other factors that we've been thinking about.
Karen,
Yeah,
can I ask a question about that one?
yeah, please.
On the drought issue, I mean, it is clearly an important issue for the greater Boston area, Massachusetts, et cetera. But our being plugged into the MWRA water system gives us an extraordinary amount of protection.
It's amazing, right? I was so excited when I moved to Southborough that we didn't have water.
Well,
restrictions.
MWRA, as folks, I think I've mentioned, I'm on their advisory board. We get a seat on that. And they've got like 550 billion gallons of water in Wachusett and Quabbin reservoirs, and plans to find ways to access more water. Like you can steal it from the Connecticut River if things get really tough, which Connecticut wouldn't be too happy about. But point is that there's like 5 or 6 years worth of water backlog out there waiting for Boston to use. Greater MWA water usage has gone down by a third over the last 20 years, like 300 million gallons a day to 200 million gallons a day. And conservation and better plumbing fixtures, and they recently replaced, not recently, but replaced one of the main aqueducts. The old one was leaking about 30% of the water out of it before it got to Boston.
Really
so they fixed that. So again, we and all the other MWA communities are not going to be starving for water, if you will. Not to say we shouldn't promote conservation.
We're not, and we're in a so much better. I really appreciate your point there, Sam. I think we're in so much better of a situation than most communities, west of Boston. But I think the discussion was really around, there has been actually some discussion around the fact that we're going to actually have some of the water restrictions that we haven't had in the past, based on some of the new discussions that are happening.
We may, certainly. So it's worth recognizing, I think.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't think we want to create alarm about it. I mean, other towns, I mean, Hudson, for example, has a real problem with this PFAS thing, the poly whatever stuff that's in the water. And their wells have a problem. They don't have access to MWA water. They're going to have to spend a ton of money on fixing that. And there are other towns in that same position. So I think that clearly it's a huge issue that people are going to have to deal with. We're grateful that we don't in that way, but at least pointing out that there's an area for concern and planning, and we need to be cognizant of potential restrictions, et cetera, but it's not nearly as problematic for us as most other towns. So,
well, there are other. You're right, Sam. So we don't have to worry as much about drinking water, but there are other ramifications from drought, like forest fires, which we've seen this year in spring, which is usually our wet season.
So do we want to actually add to that sentence on 1.0, as well as planning for droughts outside of human consumption?
I like that.
or planning for the impact of droughts outside of human consumption.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that addresses
Right.
addresses it well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Impact.
I like that.
And Mimi, we are buying a new tanker truck for the fire department this year, so forest fires are taken care of.
Good. That's good. Yeah, and I think, our discussion was really around wow, how grateful we are that we're not in the same situation as a lot of our surrounding communities.
Right.
Let's not be sort of, unaware of the potential problems that could emerge. And when we
Yep.
think about 10 years from now, it's a long time, right?
Yep.
And some of the challenges that, that might emerge, and should we try to build a little bit of that into our plan? Even
Yep.
things like, shade based on trees that might be planted, as we think
Right.
about our downtown and,
Yep.
in other areas.
Mhm.
So that was really the main part about it. And then there was a little bit of a discussion as well around recycling. But before I move to that, any other thoughts or comments about the drought piece?
Nope. Again, I think there's the point of be consistent with water utilization policies, MWRA, the state, et cetera, will have an impact certainly, but not as severe as some of our neighboring communities.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was a point that was brought up, and I'm not an expert at all on recycling, and recycling is not really in the kind of purview of the Open Space and Preservation Commission. And yet there was a discussion around, is single stream recycling outdated? What's going on right now with recycling as it pertains to, separation of, glass and plastic and cans, and, where is our recycling really going? So we had a little bit of a discussion about that, which quite honestly, as I mentioned, I don't feel like I have a lot of technical knowledge about, but I think is something for us to think about, because it's been more than a year since we initially created the school, whether or not we need to update it a bit.
Would you like the 2-minute update on that one?
Yes, please. Go for it, Sam.
I'm not an expert on it, but I'm actually on the Public Works Planning Board, which has been discussing this. Recycling world has gone crazy over the last several years when China stopped taking recyclables.
Yeah, this is huge, right?
Huge, because they took a huge portion of plastics and glass and paper for manufacturing purposes. They effectively closed that off almost abruptly. So then the stuff went to Malaysia and India, who have now closed that off as well, essentially. And so we got piles of stuff piling up everywhere, and people are trying to figure out what to do with it. It now costs us more to get rid of our recycled stuff than the stuff that goes in the pit at the transfer station. So if we threw it all in the pit, it would save us money. Unfortunately, there's a state law against doing that. So we got to actually do recycling, whether it's single stream or separated. There are companies who actually will work with towns to cull the stream of recyclables in ways that they can generate more revenue from. So there are things, specialized markets that they can find to help recover some of that cost. But there is no obvious solution that anybody seems to have identified at this point for what to do with it. And so, I mean, at this point, it almost doesn't matter whether it's single stream or not. It all winds up in the same stack, which is unfortunate. So again, a big problem that everybody's struggling with. I have no idea what the right answer is at this point, but we certainly need to pay attention to it. Our transfer station costs have gone up this year because we're paying more to get rid of the recycled stuff. But again, I think there's a lot of pressure. A lot of people are actually getting into energy creation out of this stuff. You actually can make it economic if you burn it to create electricity or power or whatever. Difficulty there is that creates a lot of air pollution if you don't invest heavily in the scrubbing technology for the exhaust coming out of the burning process. And so a lot of people don't want to spend that money. So again, no obvious solution. I think it qualifies to go on the radar here as a large and growing problem that the town is going to have to deal with going forward, but is not going to be able to do it alone. So it's discouraging news, but that's sort of where we are.
It's discouraging. It is for sure. I know for myself personally, I did a lot of research into kind of who was going to be our trash collector, and we chose Orvis, which I think they do a pretty good job, but they, even they are I'm unclear about exactly. When I put all my stuff in my recycle bin, like, is it really getting recycled? So I think, it's a complicated situation, and it's one that seems to be constantly. So as we think about the master plan, it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to need to be updated, but just starting to think about what's the most current information that we have and how can we build that into the plan.
Yes, I'd say we recognize the current instability in the recycling world and continue to aggressively explore options to find ways to get the best solution for the residents of the town.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Very wobbly, but
Yeah.
that's all we know at this point.
Yeah, I think
Right. Sam, is there any possibility that we will not be able to transport trash out of town?
Unlikely at this point. Our contract with Harvey is up in like 3 years or something like that. So we're set for another 3 years. That was like a 15-year contract or something. Clearly, that's going to be very different when that comes up. We actually just worked with the Board of Health to license the trash haulers, the private haulers in town, because what we have never known is how much volume they do individually. We know how much goes through the transfer station. But if we knew how much trash in total is being exported from town, that would give us a lot better understanding of what the economics are for the town in terms of various options. And in years past, the town has required the private haulers to dump their stuff in the transfer station to increase our volume for the transfer station. That's not clear that's going to necessarily help us at this point, but we just actually did a big study of the transfer station that concluded we're doing better than most towns in terms of the operation, the economics, and whatever. There are some places who are really suffering because they've got low volume, huge expenses, and basically it's draining them. So, but Bill, we're going to have a better idea soon in terms of what we need to do to negotiate the new deal with Harvey or whoever else wants to bid on it. We're not aware that anybody is going to pull out of the market, but who knows if it really gets dire, maybe they do.
It's good.
So again, very uncertain.
I mean, my concern would be suddenly we have to use conservation land to dump trash on or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you foresee anything like that?
I can't believe that would ever be approved.
Not in this town.
No.
Well,
Sam,
if you can't put it somewhere, you got to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Sam, has the Public Works Planning Board looked at municipal composting at all?
Public Works Planning Board has looked at very little, unfortunately. It is hard to get them to meet.
So Orifice, the collection place that I have, not that I'm trying to be a commercial here, but they do have picked up composting, which one of the reasons I chose them, which is kind of cool.
Yep.
But really thinking about composting, on a larger scale, I think is important.
That's a good idea.
Do they return the soil?
They return it to local CSAs and kind of farm
cool.
area. Yeah.
But
So there's another company too, and I was trying to find the name, like Black Earth or something, that does that for
the
municipalities.
volume of food waste is relatively small.
40%.
40%?
Yeah.
You think so? That's a high
Well,
amount.
that's what's been 40% of food is wasted.
I know.
in this
I'm talking
country.
about the total amount of trash.
Oh, I don't
to
know.
The transfer station is relatively small tonnage of what I would think of food waste there. But not that we shouldn't be very focused and try to reduce anything we can do. But I don't think that's where the bulk of the volume comes from.
Well, and I don't know if this will happen in Massachusetts or Southborough, but as I think about us trying to be a kind of model community around being green, my daughter is living in Burlington, Vermont, and the whole state of Vermont, composting is mandatory. You have to compost.
Yeah.
And I love that personally. So I think about, is that in our future in the state of Massachusetts within the next 10 years? I don't know. I mean, I hope so, but thinking about that as well.
Yeah.
Mimi, is there any restrictions that would prevent somebody from composting on their own property?
I hope not, because I have 2 compost bins on mine.
Yeah.
So, other than just
I have one on mine.
self-management around.
Yeah, no, there isn't.
Around animals that might get into it or
A
things like that.
program,
Yeah.
the town could, or somebody could institute a program to initiate composting independent, and that would eliminate at least some flow of trash through the transfer.
Exactly.
Sure.
That could be helpful. That's
Well,
right.
supplying like compost bins. I know I got mine from the Marlboro dump.
Right, and I got mine
Aha.
from Southborough and I mean, from Framingham, and I don't believe there's any program has been established here in Southborough
No,
to
No,
initiate
it's not.
something.
It's not.
Mhm.
I saw in the Marlboro Police Report, they had reports of missing compost units from their transfer station.
I have a receipt from mine
Well,
from
what do you guys think? Do you
20
think
years ago.
we add some element of composting to these goals?
I think it's a great idea.
I would, yeah. Let's do
Consider
it.
it. Yep.
Again.
Well, I think 2.3 kind of identifies that.
It does. It says identify ways to recycle compostable material. It doesn't say what you do with it though, or I don't know if we should be more specific, but it does in general address the issue.
Maybe you
Or-
can just put in reuse of material.
And it doesn't really focus on, developing a standardized process in town, which might be something that would be beneficial, just not, it would be more action item. If
Or
I'm
you could
channeling
put
Joyce.
parenthetical there, e.g.
Mhm.
developing a town system or blah, 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 some other ideas in there potentially.
Yeah, that's good.
I just added your really great wording there, Kat, but how do the rest of you guys feel about this? Does this seem reasonable to add to that goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what does standardized process mean?
That's great. That's great.
Town-sponsored process or whatever.
Okay, well, maybe that may.
Yeah, I like
maybe-
town-sponsored process. It gets a little bit more teeth to it.
So would this be part of a larger recycling program or independent?
Independent. I think
either.
it's just a composable material.
Mhm. It's good.
It's like
I
we
love
don't want
it.
to boil the ocean with everything, but if we can take this out.
Mhm.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, I agree, it'd be great to do something that's, sponsored by the town, but I think even just, composting is, many people on this call, we compost at home too, and many people have mentioned they do it, but, maybe even just getting some information out there, making it available until we get a more formal program up and running, because it is pretty easy.
Education and outreach. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
I would consider that part of it.
Mhm.
yeah.
Does that look okay to you guys?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Or maybe, do we need standardized, just town-sponsored?
That's good.
Okay. Good. Good. And then the last piece was just when it comes to rain collection, loved it, but thought maybe we're really starting to focus on, kind of town-owned property as well with things like native plants and pollinators. So maybe developing a rain collection system on town-owned properties as well to supplement the goal that related to rain barrels and rain collection.
Now, the only thing about that, and this is just, I won't waste a lot of time.
Mm.
That's nice. Okay, we collect the water, then what? I was thinking maybe on town-owned property, we have, I don't know if there's a technical word for it, like a dry well, where all the water goes into the ground, so it, recharges the, aquifers and stuff like that. Versus a collection, it's more of a discharge back into
That's good.
the
Yeah.
aquifers or the
Do
aquifers.
you recommend a kind of rewording of that then?
Yeah, I don't want to collect it. I want to direct it to the,
Recycle to the aquifer?
yeah.
Actually, but if you think of Breakneck Hill, and if we collected rainwater there, which is, we need a lot of water there. They need a lot of water to use on the pollinator gardens and
Well,
stuff.
not as much because
Right.
you have native plants, right? They don't need as much water.
Well,
But yeah, you're
last
right.
summer was spent all summer, you remember Freddie's request every
Yeah.
few days, who can run water up the hill,
Mhm.
and it's a hill. So
Mhm.
anyway, that would be one opportunity where installing a rain barrel would be useful for property. In addition to what you're saying, Tom. So there's two scenarios. One is where you actually could use it for your gardens, and the other is replenishing the.
Right, and the community garden is there too.
Yeah, that's great.
Though they'll always need water there.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the rooftop gutters, but I was not even thinking of what you said, Kat.
Yeah.
I agree with both of those. I was thinking, we get the waters going down the gutters instead of going down the streets into the catch basins. Let's discharge it into the aquifers. But I like, especially what you were saying, some kind of rain collection storage on places like Breakneck. and stuff like that.
And I would like them to look like a tree or a bush rather than a big plastic thing out there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Our current stormwater bylaw actually encourages that, Tom, because for people who are building now, they've got to contain the stormwater on their property, which involves things like rain gardens and dry wells and so forth, to not let that rainwater run out onto public streets, other neighbors' properties, etc. But there are certainly many, many properties in town that were built before those bylaws became effective. So if there were some, again, way to encourage people to think about, recycling rainwater as opposed to running it down your driveway into the street, I don't quite know how you do that other than education and encouragement, but that could
Yeah, that's
again,
great.
save a
Well,
fair amount of water.
There's tons of conservation land in Southborough, and I'll wager that I can find only very few that actually have ponds that collect the water and recharge it into the aquifer. So one of the simplest ways to address this particular problem, at least on conservation property that towns own, is just to do a little bit of backhoeing and create ponds, as they do down here on Beals Preserve. We did that, or actually Paul, the previous owner of that particular property did it, and he's created a pond there which provides exactly the functions that we're talking about here.
The vernal pool construction project.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Vernal pool construction project.
Or something like that, yeah. And it promotes various wildlife and other types of activities if the ponds are constructed there. And under those circumstances, conservation or whoever could actually initiate those processes themselves and ask for money to make that happen. It's not even a question of going to the population as a whole and trying to kind of coerce them into doing things.
That's good.
Interesting.
Good.
Maybe we could arrange for you to borrow Karen Galligan's backhoe some night. Well,
Karen Gilligan's backhoe has already taken out my garden in front of the house, so.
well, she owes you one then.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I don't want to monopolize too much time in terms of the meeting, but I just wanted to share some of these. I think those are the most important changes. Some of these others were really just small wordsmithing kinds of things. And there was one other addition, which was pursue a town bylaw requiring the use of native plants and not allowing chemicals related to lawns and insect spraying. So that was the one other addition that wasn't just wordsmithing.
So just to clarify, the bylaw requiring the use of native plants for whom?
Sorry, for public spaces,
Oh, okay, got it.
for Southborough spaces. Not we have no control over what people do in their own yards.
But are you anticipating a bylaw to not allow chemicals related to lawns on private property or public
To be
property?
honest, Sam, yeah, for the public spaces, or as people are creating new buildings, new construction.
Okay, but
Should that be clarified, the public piece versus private?
yeah, I
Mm.
think so. Yeah.
Although I like to encourage private,
Yeah.
but I
Maybe
don't know how.
hard sale to tell people they can't use lawn fertilizer.
We don't want people to feel like we're trying to control them, but we do
Sure.
want to actually help them make the right decision through education. But-
Yeah, I was going to say the education piece is huge. There was actually, I noticed earlier today on the town, the Southborough community Facebook page, there was actually a discussion right on this topic. And I learned some
Yeah.
things that I hadn't known before, and I thought I knew some stuff about that. So, I definitely think there's an opportunity for education. I don't know how we,
Yeah, I totally
codify that.
agree. Yeah, and I think things even like the winter sow, for the seeds for native plants. Amazing the outpouring of response from that, and the people that were really kind of educated around that, and even for me, I was really a newbie on all of this, before I joined the Open Space Preservation Commission, and I was just saying to my husband as spring is coming and everything's popping in my garden that like it's the native plants that are coming back the strongest and that are already emerging, and that's great to see. So I think the more that we educate people, the more they'll make their own choice, and hopefully that will be the choice that that we would
The
like.
right choice.
The right choice. I was going to say that, the right choice, but I was trying not to sound judgmental, but yeah, I think the right choice.
I'll be judgmental. I'll feel that.
Yeah.
Darren, native plants is always a strange definition. And I think somebody at this point in time, whether it is part of this or wherever, going to have to define what native plants are.
Yeah, so Bill, we sort of have done that. So so there's a website where you can actually identify what are native plants and what aren't, and what are good for pollinators and what isn't. And we've been trying to include that in kind of the education stuff that we've been doing, the Open Space Preservation Commission. And and it really is defined as plants that were native to Massachusetts, to our particular area. Back, in the, 1800s, 1700s. And so there's a whole kind of Excel spreadsheet where you can input a plant, or you can look for plants that bloom in certain seasons and find out what's native that would grow well in the either shade or sun or, wet environments that you have.
Mm-hmm. Barberry isn't one of them, is that correct?
I don't claim to be an expert on all this. So when you give a specific one, I'm happy to check that for you. So barberry is the one you want me to check?
That'd be fun. Freddie and I have had
Yeah,
this
I'll do it. I'll look it up for you. I'll let you know. Yeah.
And I guess the only reason I raise this issue is that some plants are actually part of a chain. So if in fact you want if you want ticks, for example, then something like barberry or a seed-bearing plant is great for promoting ticks via the animals that eat off the barberry or other types of things of that nature, such as mice, which then pass it on to the deer and the deer ticks, and now you get disease associated with deer ticks. So
for sure. Yeah.
be careful about the grand scheme of things when we promote just pollinators.
Yeah, I think we're really trying to define it as native plants as opposed to cultivars. So that's one differentiation as well. But I agree, it's complicated. I'm confused too, as I look at it, and so that's why I'm so grateful for these pretty accessible spreadsheets and links to be able to really look up certain plants and find out if they're native or not.
All right, I just putting something in a 10-year plan when in fact it will have other consequences, maybe foreseeable consequences. I'm just a little concerned about that. That's all.
So you're worried that putting native plants in a plan that could have bad consequences in the future?
No, it's not native plants that I'm so much worried about is what is a native plant. And I think people have to understand how to determine what that is.
I agree. And I think that's really part of, we do have a section in the goals around education. And I think we just all need to recognize, at least for me personally, that gosh, 10 years feels like a short time, but also a long time. And things may change in terms of the definition of a native plant during that time, just as things may change around some of the other factors that we build into our plan. But the more that we can be clear on kind of our overall overarching goals,
Okay.
I think that the easier it will be for what we put in the plan to be something that can be fulfilled within a 10-year span.
Barberry is non-native.
Okay,
that would be my take.
Yeah,
And,
you're faster than me in terms of whipping
and
out
there
that
is
spreadsheet.
conservation property all over town that's loaded with barberry.
Yeah.
So, and that really does promote deer ticks and disease associated with it.
Well, luckily it's not native, and so we're not going to plant that. Yeah.
Well, but there's a lot of it well, never mind. It's a long discussion. There are also animals that, like, let's take beaver, for example. Beaver was introduced into town. Not introduced, it actually happened into town on conservation property. How it got there, God knows. But there was a beaver colony over there. And as soon as they built their little dam and raised the water level, it began to flood people's basements.
Oh, God.
So, and
Yeah.
beaver was extraordinarily native to Massachusetts 100 to 150 years ago. And they were completely wiped out by farmers because, oh, guess what? It causes problems with water that the farmers didn't want. So they killed them all off. So it's, see my point?
I
Well,
see your
plus
point.
we destroyed their habitat, so they have no place else to
Yeah,
go
we
than
moved
close to
in
people's
on top.
houses.
Agree. I mean, those are the people build houses in the swamps these days around town because people let them do it. And if the water level rises just maybe a foot, I remember when I was involved with SOLF, my God, I used to get phone calls all over the place. The water level's up a foot. You guys have got to do something about it. And that was water coming off of conservation property owned by SOLF.
Well, and I think, you bring up such important points, right? Because I think we all need to recognize as we write this plan that, this is ever evolving, ever changing, and it's not static by any means.
Right.
If our goal is to try to create the kind of most green and, equitable and, conservation oriented environment possible, given some of the other constraints of the town, then I think that's a good goal. I think it's a good thing for us to be known for.
Yeah, it's not that, I mean, I'm not an expert on wordsmithing here, but in fact, anything which basically says that we have an objective, but it's a reviewable objective as part of our plan, then builds in this very concept that you're talking about.
Great point, but I'd add another one to it, that for this conversation, there is an inherent interconnectedness to all this stuff.
There is, for
So
sure.
you can't do one thing without affecting several others. So I think that it would be very helpful, if only for education for readers of this document, to identify at least key, critical, important, whatever high priority kinds of interconnections to say, we want to do this, but recognize that it will have an impact on X, Y, and Z here that we need to coordinate and plan for, kind of thing. So the more of that kind of content we can build in, I think that makes the document much more useful for people.
Stronger.
Right.
I agree. And one of the things that Judith mentioned to me when we had a one-on-one conversation was just that if we can have an introduction, which, we're not writing that yet, but that kind of has some overarching kind of principles, values, like what do we really stand for as a town? And maybe this is something that we can build in, is the recognition that sometimes definitions will change. Sometimes there'll be unintended consequences, that we need to really look at the interdependencies holistically of the different goal areas and make some statements around what those are. I think, that will make the plan more flexible in a way that it can stand the test of time for the next 10 years.
And one thing I've done in other projects, not for something like this necessarily, but once you sort of get the basic structure and the goals and recommendations outlined, you can put together a matrix and have the list of recommendations down to one side and across the top as well, and go through and mark where things are connected.
I like that idea, Sam. Yeah.
These are connected, and not that there's an easy solution, but this particular goal also has a connection to these 14 others over here. So you get a sense of that interdependency stuff, not that again it's a solution to the problem, but at least it makes you aware of how the overall structure fits. And again, I don't think that's something that we ought to do for the plan document necessarily, but it might be an interesting exercise at some point.
I think it would be really good. I think it would be really good. And I think that's less about the individual goals within, open space and rec and trails, and more about the kind of big picture of
overall
reduction or what we're doing around implementation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So those
Thank you,
were
Karen.
things that we talked about. Yeah. I didn't think that would take quite that long, but it's a
Good conversation.
I'm so happy that there's so much passion around this topic, which I'm also passionate about. So,
and I should point out that our current landscaping bylaw encourages the use of native plants.
I love that. Yeah.
So it's not like far afield, that it's not a foreign concept, because we certainly push it on the planning board.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I will also say that, I did have a text interaction today, with Kristen in regards to the rec goals, and they really are making some progress. She felt like they would be pretty ready to give an update and a report on the rec goals very soon. So I think that's forthcoming, hopefully for our next meeting.
Okay. Tom, do you want to talk about your housing chapter?
Yes. Let me give, I can present it, Sarah, or you can. I actually have it up. And so we actually have a chapter. It's revision 1A or 0.001. So let's go through it a little bit.
Sure.
Again, we put our own, we'll call it formatting around it. Actually, see the screen. We put our own formatting around it. I know we talked last meeting to have someone to wordsmith it better than most of us, so it has the consistent look to it. So the good and the bad for us is we got to pull a lot from the housing production plan. So what was good about it is we kind of like, we didn't want to make it too long because that was one of our themes. Right now it's 13 pages for this section, and it could be cut a little bit. But we got rid of a lot of statistics that seemed meaningless around the housing element, especially around, medium income, income levels, type of jobs and stuff like that. I don't think that's applicable for the housing section. So I know there's a lot. I don't expect we're going to go through this line item. Like I said, a lot of this was from the housing production plan. I'm going to go a little bit slow.
Are you showing your screen?
I'm not sharing it.
No, I think it's just,
I can see it.
yeah,
I can see it.
I put your faces in front of it. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Kat. And like I said, it is a lot from that. So not that we regurgitated, we did pay, the Shopsy did pay for this. There's a lot of great information, so there was no reason why not to reuse some of it.
Yeah, we just kind of tweaked the narrative to, to kind of give it a little bit more of a general overview rather than specifically related to, affordable housing production, but just housing production in general.
Yes, thank you for that. So Sarah and I made sure that despite of this is not for affordable housing, this is housing, like she said. So we got rid of some of the stuff that was too specific to affordable housing. We could share this out to the group afterwards if you want to go through it. But like I said, I'm going to go a little bit quickly because this is in the housing production plan. Everybody's more than welcome to review it. This is, we'll call it, this is really now the newest section. So one of the things, we did the outline that Judith shared with us. We have the introduction. And one of the stuff was housing action. What did we do since the 2008 master plan? So housing actions since the 2008 master plan. So we cut and pasted, when I say we, Sarah, cut and pasted a lot of the goals that was in the 2008 plan. And what we also did is we also then from here, a lot of them, these are very generic, but we also felt it important to what do we do for approved housing subdivisions from the 2008 master plan to 2020? So we listed all the major developments in town, approved housing developments. We also, number of units. So we got a little bit more statistics into it. We also listed the individual affordable housing because that is a component of housing. And did we have one? I thought we had one with the approved housing and the in progress subdivision. So they're not.
So I have to still add that in progress section to this.
So just to let everybody know, down here will be in progress. So these are not approved or anything. These are nothing. It could be paper roads or whatever, but we felt that since it has been going through the process in the last, 12 years, it was important to just to list them. This is, again, this is fact stuff. This makes an easy way to find out what we've been doing in the town for housing. We listed all our affordable housing stock. This dictates the 40B.
Yeah, so for I'm sorry to interrupt.
Nope.
For the affordable housing stock, what I did was actually I went through the subsidized housing inventory and I took only the units that are actually affordable and put them in this particular table. Because if you know anything about the subsidized housing inventory, if a property has 25% of their units set as affordable, then the town can count all of those units toward their SHI goals, which is great for the town, but it doesn't necessarily fully reflect exactly how many affordable units are in town. So I pulled out, the ones that were affordable. Madison Place, for example, obviously a much larger development, but there's only 42 actual affordable units.
No, that's just for rental projects, isn't it, Sarah?
No, ownership
Oh,
too.
no, this is rental and
Ownership.
ownership.
No, but I
Yes.
mean, so ownership projects, if you have 25% affordable, the whole project counts
No,
on the
No,
inventory?
just rental, sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, I was
Project,
confused about the question.
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
Hey, Sarah, can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
And Tom, one of the things that I actually have found interesting in the past when I've had to dig into it is to actually see what DHCD's record is of the subsidized housing inventory numbers and how that compares to the 10% threshold. I may have missed it as you scroll through. If that's not in there, I
No,
think that might be an interesting thing to include.
Sure.
So here's what it is, and have
Yep.
a little explanation that this
Sure.
isn't all affordable, and here's some footnotes that say here are the differences. And
Sure.
here's where we are. We're at 8% now in terms of whatever the number is in terms of the 10% threshold.
Yep.
Not that that's, again, something that necessarily a critical goal, although that's something that the selectmen have talked about in terms of finding a way to get to the 10% and get back control of the process.
right.
I
And
think
that's,
people might
I
find
mean,
that interesting.
we could definitely put that in because we do track that. I don't know if it's you, Sarah, or Katrina tracks that to a
Yeah.
T.
Planning board has
Yeah.
that data. Yeah.
Yeah, I have it actually. Again, this kind of smaller, more consolidated list came from that larger list. So I can just include the larger list and a note about the subsidized housing inventory in general and where the town is towards that goal. I think
Yeah.
it's like 8.3
8 something. Yeah.
something percent.
Like 60 shy or something. But again,
yeah.
seems to, I get that question surprisingly frequently from people about where are we in that process. And I think having that documented here and maybe a little bit of context to say, the 2030 census will increase the threshold by some amount. So if we're, thinking about leading the target with that, one ought to think about X units to be able to hit the 10% threshold for the future.
All right.
So
I mean, that's definitely doable. And we'll put some verbiage around, like I said, this is currently as counted by the state, and also put down the percentage will change after the 2030 census.
Yes, the threshold will actually go up, so the number of units that we need will go, from 60 to, 70 or, I don't know the exact
Yeah,
number.
not
but
hugely
it will-
probably, but
It will
some.
definitely go up by a fair amount, or at least that's what the consultants who wrote the HPP had anticipated. Yeah.
Again, so going back to this section, this is from Judith's outline, what has happened since the 2008 master plan. Reset their goals, gave, again, statistics, approved housing, I don't know if we want to say major or just housing developments right here. Individual affordable stock, and then we will also add your suggestion, Sam, is how the state counts for 40B and put some verbiage around that. Anything else you want to put in the housing stock statistics for the last 12 years?
Do we have any data on affordability across the town? I don't know.
Actually, this.
Up here.
Well, wait, oh yeah, that's from the assessors. And then the next one down is actually I think it's a really interesting graphic because it shows the price of the housing stock and how it's increased over time.
So what are the government thresholds? I didn't read that as it went by first.
Yeah. that is, I think, is in here. I don't want to, like I said, a
The
lot of that
government
stuff-
threshold for affordability,
Yeah,
Sam?
affordability thresholds. As opposed, I'm interested in knowing, how many housing units do we have that meet, I think there are several different levels of affordability. Different
Yes.
organizations. So how many do
Um,
we have for the most common ones of those? I think is an interesting number, but if it's hard to calculate.
we
Yeah.
might be able to kind of take a look at the existing stock, in relationship to affordability thresholds.
But that's such a moving target. With today's market, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Houses go for sale and get sold in 2 days. So even if we say it's affordable today and it gets listed, I don't know, I'm gonna make this up, for 500,000, by the time it's sold, it could be like 575.
yeah, good point.
It's tough to pin that down. There is a lot of statistics, and I can't.
Tom, if
find-
you scroll down, like down
it
the
down still?
opposite way,
This way?
yep, there's one, and I think it might maybe speak to some of what you're looking for, Sam.
Oh, right
and
here.
it's kind of interesting. This one here. So this is talking about the average value of the home by year built, so it's kind of drawing a correlation between, when the stock was built and how much it is consistently kind of selling for, and so 35% of the stock was built between 1980 and 1999. And, those homes on average are about $755,000. So,
Mhm.
That kind of gives you an idea of what the earning potential would need to be for someone to actually purchase
Yeah.
that home.
Does this tell us that houses built during 1940, 1959 were poorly built, so they're worth less?
No, smaller, more reasonable.
Well, the
Right.
earlier ones though got to be smaller
That's
too,
what it
right?
is.
Before 1900 and before
More
1950.
affordable.
More affordable. I grew up in a neighborhood that had a lot of ranches, your traditional 3-bedroom ranches and stuff like that.
Me too.
And now those are very desirable where I grew up. Everybody's buying them because they want to downsize to a 3-bedroom ranch on a small lot. So, this was also, again, post-war baby boom.
Yeah.
Affordable housing for, people returning from war. So that's why you see, I don't want to say that they're cheaply built. I don't think that's adequate to say, but I think they're just smaller and more modest during that time period.
Mhm.
I agree. It is interesting though, Southborough really has a fairly new housing stock. When you look at it in relationship to, other communities across the Commonwealth. I mean, the fact that 35% was built between 1980 and 1999 is a large portion, much more than, again, a lot of other communities.
You can even say from 1980 to present, almost half the housing in Southborough.
Right. If you loop in, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think there was something like 50 new subdivisions between in the 90s.
Yes.
And that was a big population boom too in the 90s.
Yeah, I think we almost doubled our population in that 10 years.
Well, this dictates it right here. Look at how much 35%
Yeah.
of our whole housing stock was built.
I'm glad I wasn't on the planning board then.
Busy.
Let's continue with the flow of the document and we can go back and ask questions.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. So again, what has happened to 2008, our developments, and we're going to add in here. Another thing is active organizations. This is again from Judith's outline to be consistent between all the chapters. So we list the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which was its existence in 2005. We might limit the verbiage around this stuff. I cut this directly from Southborough, the Southborough town website.
Mhm.
Here's SHOPC, Southborough Housing Authority, and of course the planning board dictates a lot of that. One of the couple of questions we have, and I'll just mention it quickly, is do we want to add any other, boards into this housing sections of active organizations
Yeah, I
active.
was just trying to think of that. There may be some, let's see.
So we got the trust fund, CHOPC, Housing Authority, and Planning Board.
Let me think. Might be worth going back and looking at a list of the boards and committees on the website to see if there's anybody else that.
All right, and we could just send an email to this committee, just saying these are the ones. We're not saying it belongs or don't belongs, but at least everybody can ask an opinion of if they should be included. Again, these are active organizations, active participants in housing that makes a difference in the town of Southborough.
So as I think Sam said earlier, nobody operates in a silo, and certainly housing is something that EDC talks about. I mean, we've spoken about it a lot in connection with the downtown and the importance of mixed use, and how that, that the sort of future of development at all is this mixed use concept of having commercial and residential in the same space. So to the extent it makes sense to incorporate that, I think that we talk about it in the context of downtown, but when we have conversations with SHOPC and the Housing Authority, they're looking at other opportunities for affordable housing that, in different areas of town, potentially along Route 9 or other places. And I think mixed use is appropriate for that too. And this whole concept of having commercial with residential, that's sort of how things are trending.
Funny that you said that. We actually had EDC in there. We actually had EDC and the Capital Planning Committee.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of like vetoed both of them because I mean, I totally agree with all that stuff. We debated more about the EDC than the Capital Planning Committee, because capital planning doesn't, it will identify potential properties that SHOPC or somebody else can enact on. EDC, we didn't, again, good, better, and different. We didn't think that was, this is a 10-year master plan. Is the EDC going to be around then? Is it always going to be focused on housing? Yes, a byproduct of what you guys do is housing component to it. And of course, we all love that. I'm open to debate on this. We were torn. We were torn until what, Sarah, this morning?
Yeah, I think, SHOPC discussed it at length. So I think when Tom says we, he's not just talking about he and I, so the larger board kind of discussed it and, had some questions and thoughts around that.
Doesn't that run counter to the charge of the EDC, Julie?
Well, part of the charge obviously is to lower the residential tax rate. But I think, we are, when we can't, nothing operates in a silo, and I don't think we can talk about commercial development without talking about mixed use, and we can't talk about mixed use without talking about residential. And, I don't think that that's going anywhere anytime soon. I hope the EDC is not going anywhere anytime soon either. More and more cities and towns, and from the state level on down, are looking to have more formalized economic development boards and committees that sort of help make sure that development is done in a way that's responsible and guided, as opposed to just sort of happening without having a board or committee or and obviously planning board is involved with that too. But so I don't think EDC is going anywhere. And again, it's up to you. I don't feel super strongly about it. I understand, why you had that conversation and why it wasn't, necessarily this is definitely it. So it's not that I feel super strongly one way or the other about it, but I don't think that either of those operate completely in a silo. So, again, that's just my thoughts on it.
Well, what I'll do is we'll put it back on SHOPC's meeting to discuss this, to be in and out. We'll get actually more verbiage of why they think, or maybe they change their mind. I could, like I said, I could be persuaded both ways. I could see the argument both ways. Because a component of that is looking for everything in Southborough, not just economic development, but also that can incorporate housing. But its sole function is not that. I guess that's why, it could have swung on the other side.
I'd argue that being more inclusive is better than omitting people, I guess. So I'm inclined to include EDC. I took a quick look at the list of boards and committees, and the other one that popped out to me maybe is Historical Commission. I mean, they are not creating new housing, but they're certainly interested in housing from a historical perspective. Again, not as direct a connection, but maybe a role.
Right.
How about the Community Preservation Committee?
They certainly fund things.
Yeah, CPC funds the trust that enacts SHOPC to enact on housing, affordable housing. So, I mean, I guess where do you stop it?
Right, exactly. I hate to throw a hand grenade here, but conservation plays a role here too. So, because
think
it defines the
agree,
amount
actually.
available property.
Yep. I didn't really think about it at first, but I definitely agree with that.
And I
Right.
certainly agree with historical too. I mean, we talked about sort of the boom in the 80s and 90s, but we have a probably higher than average inventory of historical homes as well.
Mm,
And again, my bias is to be more inclusive than exclusive here. So I don't think it hurts to have people who are not maybe full-time devoted to it, but recognize that there are appropriate connections.
Okay,
sure.
But
I got no problem with that. Like I said, I don't have no horse to ride on this.
me either.
And we will discuss that. So one of the things we're going to look into, I just want to summarize for my notes: EDC, historical, and conservation. Am I
Sure.
missing anyone that we should be inclusive?
I don't think so.
Second. All right, moving on. The summary of existing conditions. What it's Judith has something.
So yeah,
verbiage.
so this is replacing the inventory. It's now I'm drawing a
Resources,
blank.
something about resources.
Resources, inventory of resources, or I'm not getting it quite right. But the way that you look at housing, there's not a lot of resources, so to speak, within the community, but there are existing conditions and there actually are barriers that have absolutely been identified that need to be taken down in order to create more housing. So we figured that is a better fit to kind of talk about what's happening now and what the barriers are and what really needs to be done to break down those barriers.
So we won't, like I said, thank you, Sarah. So we, like mixed use limitations. Again, that's why we went to existing conditions, and we have some limitations. That's an ugly picture of the backside of the Andrea, but we have, this is again current state of affairs. I mean, there's a lot of moving
Right.
pieces that are going on today. By the time this report goes out, a lot of stuff could be, removed because there's no longer a barrier. But as it sits today, we have mixed use limitations, accessory apartment limitations, and then the other verbiage above. Again, this was all identified in the housing production plan also.
Mhm.
Do we have to include the unattractive picture?
Not necessarily, no.
No, we can make it less ugly.
Painted.
Raise your
That's
hands.
what it looks
Who actually
like.
went to the Andrea during its time?
Oh, I've been there.
Sam, not you?
That was defunct when I got here, I think.
Good heavens.
Oh, a newbie.
Yeah, what a kid. Jeez,
Here, I have to have lived here 300 years just to be a real county.
that's about it.
So here's the housing goals. We reformatted, again, don't look too much into the formatting of this Word doc. It's going to be flowed when the whole master plan is done. But here's the master goals. Again, these were reviewed many times before. It's just in a slightly different format. The thing in red right now, this came from SHOPC, is can we have another goal to increase moderate? We don't want to increase affordable, let's stop talking about affordable. Let's talk about moderate, again, a goal to be able to increase moderate. Moderate could be your, 1,200, 1,500, 1,800 square foot houses versus the 3,000 and 4,000 square foot houses. So could we have a housing goal to increase moderate? As you know, from the 1940s to 55, I consider those more moderate housing that happened in town. So one of the asks of Shopsy was to add this as a goal.
So Tom,
And
Hmm.
go ahead, Sam.
I was gonna say, to me, that issue is embedded in the diversity goal. I mean, I think of diversity as having several dimensions in terms of cost, style, size, and maybe other things as well. And seems to me a good goal is to increase diversity of housing along a variety of dimensions and fold that into one goal, recognizing that it has a number of different components to it versus separating it out. That's the way I tend to think of it. But again, I defer to you guys to figure out the right way.
So Sarah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I just was gonna say, to Sam's point in regards to income threshold, moderate, for anybody who's not familiar, is typically 80% of the AMI. So your entry level teachers, usually, public service providers, police officers and such, to give them an opportunity, to live in town.
And again, away from affordable. This is why it's not affordable. That's a completely different class. McMansions, well, not McMansion, that's a bad word. I guess larger homes, that's the other side of the spectrum. But if you look at the inventory of Southborough, that middle ground, besides in the 1940s, was it 59? That's when they built a lot of them. But after that, they really didn't too much. They didn't do a lot of building around the moderate. And again, this is just a goal. One of the things down here is how do you measure this goal? We were going to mention the aggregated gross income, AGI, I think it was.
Yes, AMI,
AMI, sorry.
area median income.
That just got cut off. So we get any goal, we have to measure a goal. So one of the things we're going to do is how do you measure moderate affordable housing? And the ways we thought is to make it based off of a state index, and that was the AMI.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different discussions around town about, developers, being incentivized to kind of make their money back and, being concerned with providing really deep subsidies, talking about 30% AMI or 50% AMI. But 80% is definitely still an opportunity for a developer to make their money back. And it's also an opportunity to allow, again, folks who are in some entry-level positions in town, to live in town.
Any comments around the moderate stuff that was added to, again, everything else in black we discussed many times over at this forum. This was the new ones. Anything in red right here was newly added by Shopsy at our last meeting.
I think it's a great idea and a worthy goal. I think that, isn't that considered workforce housing? Isn't that the buzzword?
Yeah.
Workforce housing.
You can call it workforce housing, yes.
Yeah, but the issue is how to incentivize developers so that it stays within that, 80%. Because we have duplexes like over 55 duplexes that, are $700,000, and that's definitely
More.
more.
Again, this is a goal. It's more like, I won't say socialize the idea, and maybe something will stick.
Yeah.
You're right, Mimi. It's like, how do we make people do something like that? If we actually have it in here, maybe a developer would like, hey, I can put 50 houses in this area and have smaller lots and maybe a 1,700 square foot house versus 20 big houses, and the economics worked out fine for me because I read this thing that, hey, there's a need for a moderate affordable housing. Wishful thinking, maybe.
Right, so.
No, good idea.
Well, and I think to Tom's point, a lot of times when people, who are not understanding of affordable housing, hear affordable housing, they think of tenement housing, they think of, very low income individuals, and that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, affordable in terms of what we're talking about. So I think that there's a general kind of education, you know, that could happen, you know, throughout the town so that people could get behind and really understand who they're housing. I mean, people like me, you know, like I could not afford to ever buy a house in Southborough, you know, but I work for the town. I like it a lot. I think it's a great community, you know, but there's a reason why I, you know, ended up kind of much further west.
That's an understatement.
You should add to that, Sarah, you do own a lakefront property.
I do own a lakefront property. I'm fortunate.
So this was reviewed by Shopsy. In red is the addition stuff. We'll change them in black. Sarah and I will work on how to measure the moderate affordable. We're probably going to revise this thing, go over it, you know, several more times, and then have Shopsy go over it again. Probably have this all, you know, what I just described, probably before our next meeting.
So it has been posted on the shared drive, so anyone can take a look at it if they want.
I don't know if the latest, I did not put the latest up there. Did you,
Oh,
Sarah?
I think Judith put something.
No,
I can put the latest
Okay.
and greatest.
yeah,
It's
because
ever evolving.
it evolves almost, I won't say daily, but we all go in if we have an hour or something, we do.
Little piece by piece. But yeah, this version will be up, you know, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow morning for everyone's review.
Any questions on, again, we respected Judith's outline. So every chapter be kind of consistent. We did have that one change of that section to the existing conditions versus resource availability. Any questions, any things we should change on it? I wish Judith was here so she could critique it a little bit.
Your wish is granted.
Well, what power, Tom?
Magic.
Wish for power, money, fame,
This is good.
on a roll.
But my ears were burning.
I'll receive.
Well done, Tom.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, guys. I just spent 2.5 hours learning how to write effective wetland protection conditions.
Time.
This is so much more exciting.
Oh, come on, that's very exciting.
Yes.
Sorry, did you have a question, Tom? I'm
So-
yakking
so-
on here.
What we did is just to, we won't go through all the stuff we discussed. We can, you know, look at it in the notes and stuff. But we took your outline and we made our chapter to flow from that outline. So in the outline, we have introduction. This is the outline that was discussed in, you know, 2 or 3 meetings ago. We have the introduction section. This is, again, then we have what has happened since the 2008 master plan. We have active organizations. Again, this is from the outline. We changed this to summary of existing conditions versus resources available, I think it was, something like that.
That's more applicable to this section, yeah.
Yeah, and then the last one was our goals.
Perfect.
And recommendations. So this is from the, if I could pull up that, I don't know if Sarah, if you have the outline email that we're all striving to go through with the chart.
I think I can take it.
No, this is great. I mean, was the original one that I had drafted, and then Karen and Kat and
Yes.
Kristen had suggested some updates to it. I think this is great.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's really consistent with what I covered in the last meeting that was kind of just building on Judith's outline. I think it's very good.
So that's what we tried to do on this. And those are the, like I said, don't look at our formatting. We kind of like just formatted in this chapter by itself. I know the whole document will be formatted together to have the same look and feel, but we wanted to break it down into those sections.
Cool.
Good work.
Yeah, really good work.
Nice job.
Thanks.
And did you go, just a question, I don't know if you talked already about getting some of the data, the charts and, graphs and things, maps updated. Have you managed to find or
We
get
haven't talked
updated
about that.
data? Sorry?
We didn't discuss that yet.
Oh, okay. But Sarah, Tom, have you got?
So,
Have you
so
fi-
since a lot of the material has been pulled from the HPP, which was just finished last year, our data is pretty up to date.
Yes.
Again, barring information from like the newest 2020 census, it has the most current ACS data.
Yeah.
That's posted.
And we're not
at
going to
the-
get that realistically this year. So
Probably not, and so, I mean, again, there may be a new ACS out, that's a like slightly more current. But, I don't know that it would make a significant impact, on this section. Again, just since the material is coming from the HPP that was just finalized. And a couple of the tables are actually from the assessor's office directly. So those are, again, up to date, as far as what they have.
So I reshared your email, Sarah. So
Oh, yeah.
Catherine, this is the sections that I just went through. Can you guys see my updated email screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so introductions, accomplishments, active organizations, summary of resources. And we
Summary
changed
of
that to the existing
Summary
conditions
of existing conditions.
and then goals. So that's what we respected when we redid pulling in information from the HPP, the 2008 goals and the 2021 goals.
And, I think the biggest thing that I talked about in the last meeting that was kind of in line with what Judith had talked about is, at least in our section, in our open space section, there was all kinds of information in the 2008 plan that was interesting, but not related at all to the goals. So the more that we can have the information that's in the chapters actually related to the goals we're talking about, I think that's what helps make it more streamlined.
I completely agree with you. And I think that's as we revise and we revise and revise it between Sarah, myself and Shopsy, I think that will be well done.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
Good work.
Okay, so I'd like to run through the goals of the land use and zoning chapter, which is what I've worked on. And that chapter didn't have specific goals. We decided to arrive at those organically from the goals of the other chapters. So I tried to figure out main themes, main goals that kind of rode through all the other chapters to as a starting point. And if I can figure out how to share a screen, I will do that.
If you click on that green center button.
there
at
we
the
go.
bottom,
This is my first time. Is
Ta-da!
it there?
There you go. Yeah.
You did a good job.
Good.
All right, so as Karen said, there's just so much blah, blah, blah. So I started editing there and then just went to the goals.
Ooh, pink line. I love pink lining.
I had nothing to do with it. I don't know how it got there.
Really?
It wasn't pink. It wasn't pink in Word. It turned pink when I uploaded it onto the shared drive.
Yeah.
So these,
I think I think the Google color schemes are completely different to Word or Microsoft, but I like pink jacket.
so these were the goals. So did I miss the? So the first goal I have is enhance connectivity through town or within town. Because sidewalks appear in almost every section. The talk about like last mile from the train station, walking trails, cycling trails. So I think that kind of encompassed all of that. Create strategies to offer more diversity in housing. Strengthen sustainability of local business and commercial districts and villages. And establish strategies for energy conservation, carbon footprint reduction, and climate change resiliency. So what are those? So those are the 4 basic land use and zoning goals that I came up with. What are the thoughts on those?
Those are good ones. I just haven't really thought about which ones did you think about and reject?
Well, so the ones that so the things that have pink lines in them were the goals from the last plan.
Right. But were there other new ones that you considered and decided not to include, or?
Probably. But
Well, those ones you just scroll by, those are the ones you excluded, right?
Right, the old ones.
Yeah, LU,
Yeah.
I think it is, if you scroll up a little bit.
Yeah,
these
these
completely got rid of, right?
Yeah. So I just started with 4. And then under those, like the first goal would be to enhance connectivity. And then I started putting the goals from other sections, like in the transportation, which we called something different, called accessibility, or in that chapter, one of the goals was to develop a plan to improve safety, accessibility, convenience of transportation, transit services for residents and businesses. And then these are the goals from the other chapters that fit into that connectivity goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like economic development, which we have as commercial diversity. So I tried to feed them back to the main structure of the master plan that the state wants to see. So they have certain chapters that they require.
Yep.
So transportation, we called something different, and I can't think of the name of it right now. Oh, I have it right here. Accessibility and connectivity, which I think would fit under the transportation chapter, which is that the state is looking for. And there were several things about sidewalks and trail networks in there. In economic development, which
Yeah,
we
because I
had.
know also we had originally had trails and pedestrian and bike access as part of the downtown section, but then we took it out thinking it'd be, it probably fit in because traverse so many other categories as well. So, but I don't want I want to say this correctly. I don't want the downtown connectivity piece to get lost in the shuffle, because I think that, even though it's part of the larger connectivity, I think, if we're going to be trying to encourage a revitalization of the downtown, the connectivity piece for downtown specifically is pretty important, because it would be great to have people be able to access it in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. So I went through all the goals for all the chapters, trying to find things that would fit into this land use and zoning chapter. And sidewalks, trails, bike trails are like
Yep,
over
everywhere.
and over and over
Yep.
again. So I think that's like a huge goal. When we do our introduction, I would think that would be something that would shine through as being in there. And like recreation had a multi-use trail, sidewalk systems,
Mhm.
and a multi-use community center. So connectivity, not just cars and pedestrians and cyclists, but people also.
Hey, Mimi,
Yes.
can I interrupt for 1 second? I apologize. I just got a message about something I need to go take care of. So I'm going to have to sign off. So I apologize
Oh.
profusely. I will watch the rest of the meeting. And I approve the minutes when they come up. You have my proxy to vote on that when they arrive. And I promise I will be ready to do my chapter next time. So
Okay.
sorry to all. I apologize. But
Yeah.
I've got to go take care of something else here. So keep up the good work. Thanks.
Okay, bye, Sam.
Good night.
And then our so then the next
Is there a way you can make that a little bit? My screen is so small on this.
Yeah, I'm struggling too. You can zoom it. You can zoom it in, but it's not as clear.
No, okay. Let me try something on my side. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get rid of that. A little bit better. It just seems like on your size, Mimi, you can make it so much bigger because I got a lot of black space around your presentation, but maybe that's just Google how it's doing it.
yeah, so I've increased the font size, but it doesn't seem to be changing.
So
anything.
Mimi,
You
try
have to highlight it.
see the 100% on the ribbon that you were just at, that 100% to the left of where you were with the font size. And there's a drop down arrow. Yet keep going to the left. A couple more over, you'll see 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then you can probably do 125 and see if that helps. Does that help?
Oh, Matt, yeah, much better.
That's better. Also,
Thank you.
all of us can just go into view options, the drop-down menu, and we can choose 200% or 300%. You can't always see the whole screen then when you do that, but that helps too.
Thank you.
Cool.
Much better. Thank you.
And so then the second was create strategies to offer more diversity in housing. And I pulled these from the housing goals, but they may have changed, Tom, if you've been working and
the first one's
reworking.
there. We don't specifically say townhouse apartments and small scale homes. Some of those are the exact same wordings. And you, like your H3.2, remove zoning barriers. Those are good there. Yeah, that's totally applicable. And accessory apartments. In our section, we have that as existing conditions. Your H 3.2 and 3.3. Our existing conditions is we have those zoning barriers.
Oh, okay. So they're not under, well,
No.
so we can mess around with this and try and get it in line with your housing chapter.
Yeah, because this one right here, because this one says we need zoning changes. If the zoning change doesn't happen, that means this goal is not successful. That's how I read.
With the remove zoning barriers?
Yeah, because really that's a zoning thing. I mean, I don't know.
Right, so this is the land use and zoning chapter.
I
So
know. So yes, so land use and zoning chapter, then yes, keep it in there. zoning chapter more applicable.
So there's, the housing chapter doesn't reference zoning at all?
No, it just eliminates barriers. I don't know if we actually call out zoning changes. I have to
Oh,
look.
so you have removed barriers? So you want me to take the zoning out?
Yeah, remove barriers. Again, maybe it's just me, but when you say zoning, all I see is a big, long process. Maybe it's,
Oh, of course.
But, again, it's, trying to have these distinguished categories, but also recognizing that everything overlaps. You can't, the encouraging the mixed use is applicable in lots of different ways, and including obviously the diversity of housing.
Yeah. So then in the other chapters, natural, historic, and cultural resources, which I think was our sense of community. It had references to zoning, adaptive reuse of historic buildings, which is a zoning thing. Diversity of the town's population through diversity in housing. So that was another theme that seemed to be thread through many different chapters.
I guess this kind of brings up a philosophical issue too, and maybe we can't do this until we're all done with our chapters, but really trying to say, should we duplicate certain topics in more than one chapter, or should we streamline that and identify where's the best place to put it?
I think it's, I mean, I'm gonna just give my 2 cents on that, Karen. If it hits in different sections, we put it in the different sections, because then you see a common theme between multiple chapters.
So the land use and zoning, we had decided a while ago not to specifically set goals for that chapter, but to pull them organically from the other chapters. So there were no land use and zoning goals specific to this chapter. They're all pulled from other places.
Yeah, well, because originally we had like land use zoning as, I think we had a section called enablers, which was in our objectives, which was like, population build out, expanded funding, zoning, which were the things that almost like sit across all of the recommendations. So I think this is fine to do it, to kind of, have it like this. What we might want to do, I agree with Karen, is we should probably wait till all of the chapters are kind of done, and then we can lay them out and as you started to do, Mimi, see those common themes, and then I think then the narrative in this section will just kind of flow into that, and we can specifically reference, here's those recommendations in other chapters that have got a zoning dependency. And I think where we can avoid the problem we had in 2008, where we had these duplicates, is to not add them back into the implementation plan. So the implementation plan will have these zoning related recommendations from each chapter in the implementation plan, but there won't be a kind of a zoning implementation plan, because I think that's probably a way to kind of get around that. And we might find when we've kind of brought together all of the recommendations and look for those themes that there might be something that is a one-off recommendation on zoning, like, get rid of the zoning advisory board, or did I say that? I'm sure it won't be that, but some, there might be something like that that we could include, but I think it's great to have them in there.
And so then the third thing I had was strengthen sustainability of local businesses, commercial districts, and villages. And then I pulled, like a lot came from economic development, which we call commercial diversity.
So I think that, 1.5 here, continue to look to ways to leverage Route 9 corridor, we just submitted, that one-stop grant application, and there's a lot of new programming out for mixed-use development, for redevelopment, housing, in a kind of transit-oriented fashion. So that's something that's already happening, which is great, because again, we're trying to capitalize on the things, where we have momentum. So I think that should definitely stay in, maybe be, wordsmithed a little by folks, but that I think is a perfect one.
I agree.
And the last thing, which we talked a little bit about already through the open space and green chapter, was establish strategies for energy conservation, carbon footprint reduction, and climate change resiliency. And then those came from the environment goals. So the open space goals were split out like open space, environment, and recreation. Are they going to be in one chapter, or are those?
Yeah, the intention
know-
is that they'll be in one chapter. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's kind of this big cluster that we came up with originally of the open space and green initiatives.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I think one thing that will help is Karen and I looked at the open space rec section and the natural resource, cultural resource, whatever it was called, section in 2008. And I've kind of, which is the one I'm working on, I kind of donated natural resources to open space and rec. So, we can still make sure that it's clear in the final report that we're talking about natural resources, but there was so much duplication between those two sections in 2008 and it just got very confusing. So I think having done that, things like the stormwater goal, the recycling goals fit kind of really nicely in that whole open space section now.
Yeah, and then I think we'll divide it out when it comes to implementation around accountability, because huge sections of the chapter that Kat and I are now drafting and others is not necessarily the responsibility of Trails and Open Space Preservation Commission. It's other groups as well. So I think that'll be the other piece that'll be important to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
All right. So any thoughts on those 4 goals, or should I wait until the other chapters are closer to completion?
I'd say we should get these other chapters finished, because then we can, plaster them around the wall, so to speak, and look at how that would work and how those themes work. I think that would be great.
Okay. All right. So how do I unshare?
Mm-hmm. There you go. 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 There you
It should be something on the top that says stop sharing.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'll continue to think of that in the context of all the other chapters.
So one of the things that Sarah and I did purposely on purpose is to remove, like you had a lot of red line stuff.
Yeah,
We just got rid of it. I mean, we just
right.
cut it all out because going through your document, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, the noise was there and you couldn't really see it. So I guess, is there a way to get rid of all the changes so you don't see it if you're viewing the document? You know, all the
Yeah.
red stuff.
You turn them off.
Yeah, you-
version. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I did with mine is I have two versions of it. I have the original document all marked up with the redlining and the comments and all the rest of it. And then, which is you do that, that's what you do by the tracking. And then what you can do is you can save that edited document and in effect remove the tracking and accept all the changes. And then that gives you a kind of a clean next version to work on, but you still got the original one if you ever want to go back and see why on earth did I take that out.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so I found fundamentally that the 2008 document got so redlined for me that I just started
You
a
started a
fresh
new one,
document and
Yeah.
just
And I think whichever way kind of works for you. I mean,
yeah.
as we
Well,
get
I just wanted full disclosure, you know
Oh,
what I
no,
mean?
no,
So
no,
like it's not gonna be like a, you know, any kind of
I think everyone's sections are going to be slightly different, you know. Access the transport circulation is I've still got chunks in that I wanted to keep, but the natural historic resources, I mean, the scalpel has come out so much.
Okay.
And just start again with a clean document.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
And the other thing was, so there were a lot, although housing, it looks like you're up to date on all your data because you just had the housing plan done, but there are a lot of charts and data in the old plan that some of them we have, some of them MAPC did for our forum.
For the visioning, yep.
Yeah, so we have some, but I'm sure there's a lot that needs to be updated. So there's money in the planning budget, and Ralph still owes us some time. So I was chatting with Karina, and she thought if we could figure out what we need, she can, you know, get MAPC to update the data for us.
That's a worthy discussion, is like, how much time is left and how can we most strategically use it?
And there's some money in the budget too. There's $2,500 in the budget for the master plan committee so we can sweeten the pot a little bit.
I mean, one thought I had was if we, as people finish editing their chapters, you know, in the case of housing, you've been able to basically pull in the relevant data because it's already been updated for 2000 and in your HPP. I mean, you know, I go back to the transport. I mean, it's some of the transport data, even in 2008, was out of date because it related to 2003. So I've just got a little kind of set of notes that say, here's the data that I'd like to have someone update, whether it's, you know, Ralph or something we can do internally. But it's only the data that's relevant to what I think I'm going to be putting into the chapter. You know, so a good example would probably be, I think there's something in there around journey to work. Yeah, it's method of transport for journey to work. Well, it comes directly off the census data. So the only data we could get would be 2010 because we haven't got 20 yet. So frankly, there's no point in putting it in there just for the sake of having it in there from my perspective. It's not
Agreed.
really going to alter the goals or recommendations, because a lot of what we're, those accessibility connectivity goals are about that, as opposed to, gosh, Southborough suddenly become this mega suburban hub, and we need to radically change our transport needs around it. I don't think there's probably that much difference between where we were in 2008 and where we are now for that. But there may be in other sections that, data, charts, graphics, maps that people really want to see if we can update, because it's part of telling the story. So if everyone, keeps notes of which existing bits of data they want to have updated, or new things that we want to have made available, to see if they actually, help tell the story, I think that would be great.
With the caveat that we have to sign a contract by 6:30.
Yeah. Okay, so we should probably ask everyone to do that for the next meeting.
For the next meeting,
Yeah,
like what data or charts or
Yeah. And
maps.
anyone that's, got so much spare time that they want to have a look at it, I've started in the shared drive. There's the folder that's called Draft 2020 Master Plan. I put a couple of subfolders in there, and one of them is actually called Data. And there's some quite good data. It's like white papers with a lot of data in them that have come from one of the Metro West research groups. So I put those in there, and that might be data that's kind of more meaningful than some of the stuff we had in 2008. And in particular, there's one really interesting little, I think it's only a couple of pages, that actually talks about the impact of COVID on Metro West. So there's a couple of things in there. One's called Strength in, I think they're both Strength in Numbers. There's Strength in Numbers 2019 and Strength in Numbers 2020, which talks about the economic, kind of environment within Metro West. And 2019 is the normal data that you'd see. 2020 actually specifically talks about COVID, which I thought was a kind of really useful thing to we could incorporate some of that. So. I guess I should probably just admit I do not have an updated draft yet of either of my sections. I am getting there. I promise I'm getting
Not
there.
everybody has a Sarah.
I know.
You won't let anyone else have a Sarah.
So I think accessibility, connectivity, the transport section, I'm probably further ahead on that one than I am on sense of community, despite having given some of it to Karen. So I am making pretty good progress, but what I've ended up having to do on that one, because we lost Kathy Bartolini and Bonnie, and that was really their area of kind of knowledge, and they'd worked on it in the first 18 months of the plan process. I've kind of had to go back to some pretty basic desk research, and I've also reached out to Karen Gallagher and Karina and said, okay, here's all my questions. Can you answer, please? It's like, but hopefully they'll come back, and I'll do the same with with Kate at the Historical Commission. So it feels as though it's starting to come together for sure, but it's going to be the next meeting before I have anything a bit more substantive to share with people.
Okay. Are we ready to do minutes?
I don't want to, I probably should have brought this earlier, but I don't want to have to dive into start a whole new conversation if we couldn't put it off for next time. But I did have a couple of things that I wanted to consider adding to the downtown section, just because there are things that have sort of come up recently. So we can put it off till next time, but I just, if you don't mind just kind of putting them out there for people to just think about.
Oh no, go on, go for it.
So one of them that's come up recently is sort of the boundaries of what we're talking about when we talk about the downtown district. and, there's been some suggestions that we have this issue with the split lots, that we're sort of starting to reach out to the owners of those split lots to talk about how those want to be dealt with. But also a few, I believe it was on the planning board meeting last week, somebody else came up and said that they would want to be added to that district. So again, I don't know that we need to do much other than add as one of the sort of sub goals is, reviewing the boundaries of what the downtown means, because even in the last, even in the 2008 version, they sort of discussed the boundaries in these weird and different ways that weren't necessarily tied to the zoning district. They called it like the core something or other. But so again, just as sort of a different, just as one of the sub goals, thinking about what do we mean when we say downtown, and are there portions that of what we're thinking about downtown that might be inappropriate to be included, or are there portions that should be expanded when we're thinking about the downtown district. So that was one of my 2 points. And then the other one was thinking about ways to encourage, we, through the zoning bylaw we're proposing, we are trying to encourage certain uses, again, with the idea of sort of, having a hand at being proactive and thinking about what's our vision for downtown, what sort of businesses do we want there? Let's put those as sort of the by right uses within the structure of the limitations that we created, because those are the kind of businesses we're trying to attract that we think, add to that sense of community and that feeling that we're trying to create downtown. But other things, other tools other than zoning that we could use to help encourage those uses. And one thing that the EDC started talking about was this sort of district improvement financing, and I think we're going to raise it with the Board of Selectmen as well, and that could be used in other areas as well. But and we don't even have to specifically state that as one of the things that we're going to do, but just as a broader goal of thinking about how do we encourage the uses that we're looking for to create that. Another thing that's come up is like reserving a liquor license specifically for downtown, so that if we were able to get a restaurant, we make sure we have a liquor license available for the downtown. So things like that. So again, I should have brought that up in the beginning goal part, and then it moved along and I didn't, so I'm sorry, but I just wanted to plant that as I was starting to sort of work on my chapter, those kind of came up in my mind.
Great thoughts.
Like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else, or do we want to do minutes?
Minutes works for me.
Sounds good.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from 3/10/21?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Signs?
Aye.
McKee?
Aye.
Watson?
Yeah.
Markaleer?
Yes.
Savidovich?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
And Latrell, yes. Okay. In our next meeting, the proposed date is 5/5. Does that still work for everyone? And I wanted to discuss the meeting after that. Is the proposed date is 6/2, but Sarah, you said you can't make that.
It is my son's birthday.
So we can't possibly function without Sarah.
Tom certainly can't.
And
I could
birthdays
find
are
you
very
another facilitator.
And birthdays are very important.
He will be 16 years old.
Oh my heavens. How does that a little young thing like you have a 16-year-old?
Were you
Were you 5 when you had him?
I was 22, so you can math it out. But yeah, it was, it's been quite the ride. I'm happy he's a freshman in high school, and we're working towards getting his license this summer.
Oh, that was
Mm.
the most terrifying part of my parenting career.
It is
Kids
a
learning
really
how to
hard-
drive.
hard
I'm
time.
really scared. Really scared.
I had to punt that to my husband because I'm not stable enough for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I had a kid that totaled 2 cars before the age of 18.
Oh my God.
Don't tell her that. You keep those stories to yourself there.
I'll never go
All you do
anywhere.
is like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
terrifying.
Wow.
So,
Oh, those milestones are important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
so
you.
do you want to move that a week with the 9th work?
So, okay, this is gonna sound crazy, but it's true. That's my birthday. I don't mind working on my birthday, but I just
no.
that's fine.
Virtual cake.
Right? Exactly. You know, it'll be fun. We'll make it festive. Because I
We're
don't
talking
want to,
about
we
moving the
we
May
don't have to
6th
get
one?
off
Is
schedule.
that
just
right? To May to 9th, or I'm sorry, what was the?
The 9th works, June 9th.
No, but that's your birthday.
I know, but it's okay.
No, we
Oh, I
can't do
understand.
this without you.
No, I'll work.
Not on your birthday.
I also have a conflict on the 9th for
Oh.
Sarah's birthday.
Oh, okay.
That's sweet, Tom.
Can we do it another day of the week? I don't want to push it out another week, but I mean,
Yeah, right. Any, you know, a Tuesday, Thursday.
I think we run into Sam and Judith Tuesday, Thursday.
Okay,
I mean,
right.
is the conservation
Yeah,
on Thursdays.
yeah.
Yeah, and then Board of Selectmen on Tuesday.
It is, but it's only every, wait a minute, what? I've got my calendar with me. What's the date we're talking about?
how about
I can work
Third-
it out.
First 2 weeks in June.
June.
Either the 3rd or the 10th.
1, 2, 3. I think the 10th should work. I think Conservation Commission is the 3rd.
10th works for me.
Because there's certain weeks when they're in the same.
Is the 10th birthday for you, Sarah?
The 10th is birthday.
All right, so do we want to do that Thursday, the 10th?
Of June.
Yeah, 6:10 at 7:30.
I do have a question that's kind of related to this, but what's the latest in terms of being able to get together in person, Mimi? Is there like any hope?
I
haven't heard anything. Have you, Sarah? I know that
actually haven't, you know, but I'm interested to ask the question, you know, especially with the weather, you know, kind of turning, like getting better. It's going to be like summer and spring. So I don't know if there's any kind of provisions that are going to be built in for outdoor meetings or, you know.
Yeah.
didn't the
Or-
CDC
I don't know.
say as long as you're vaccinated, you can hang around with vaccinated people? Is that true?
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Congratulations.
I'm so excited.
So is that a question that, is that true? That vaccinated can hang around with
I
vaccinated?
think it is true. If you pass
It is true.
your 2-week time.
Mhm.
I'm not saying this is even possible or even feasible or even legal with open meeting laws. If it is, the vaccinated people can meet and the non-vaccinated can Zoom? I don't know.
I think with the new IT manager coming on, I mean, I'm hoping anyway that they're gonna start to iron out how to do hybrid sessions, because I think that the Zoom is not going away, even if everybody can meet in person. I think that the level of access for folks, in
Yeah.
town
Here.
is really fantastic, and the capacity for people to participate is, increased. So, but I think, we really need, a hybrid, an effective hybrid model, for the streaming and all that. I think it's going to be great. So I hope
Just
that
like the schools, right? Just like our kids had to deal with and all that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'd also want to highlight what I think I understood from the conversation. So I just want to make sure I'm clear, and if so, that we emphasize it to others, which is, did I hear you say, Mimi and others, that we had access to the consultant to maybe help update data if we could identify what that data was that needed to be updated within our chapters by X date? I don't know what that date is, but if that's so,
by the
if you
next
could send
meeting.
that, like
Yes,
blast
yeah.
that out to everybody in big red letters, just saying, let us know what update you need to make to data by this date so that we can leverage our consultant resources or something like that.
Okay, so that will be our next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So 5/5.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So be it.
In a second.
I'll second it, Mickey.
Okay. Signs?
Aye.
Mickey? Watson?
Yes.
Markalier?
Yes.
Savidovich?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
Latrell? Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Guys.